We are all familiar with the fact that we have basic needs, and we are even familiar with what some of those needs are. We all need food, we all need shelter from the elements, we all need bear spray probably. We all need relationships with other reasonably functional human beings. But there is one that we seem to lack consideration for, or we overlook, or even if we don't overlook it, we lack an appreciation for what the implications of having it or not having it are. I'm talking about the belief that our lives have a certain meaning. And I'm not just talking about the sum total, but even the more condensed experiences of our lives, that they convey some meaning to us. We may see this in the most pronounced way when someone is going through some kind of a crisis. That is when we are most likely to earnestly ask the question, why? Why is this happening to me? In the hopes that we can grasp some kind of meaning that will help us survive this situation. This is critical because without it, many of us would just give up. Many of us wouldn't be able to endure all the hardships, suffering, the losses, the difficulties, the distresses, or even just the daily grind of daily life. Most of us don't want to be doing that work or suffering through those kinds of experiences. But since we must, there is a consolation in the belief that there's some kind of meaning to it, even in, and perhaps especially in, our trials and tribulations, that there's some kind of lesson to be learned in the information that is being conveyed through those experiences, and that if we are attuned to it, we can grow in strength and wisdom. Even a nihilist like Friedrich Nietzsche said that whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger. In other words, there is some good derived from my experiences, even the most unpleasant ones. If any of us really conceded that there was no meaning or purpose to our lives and truly meant that, then I expect that there would be far more people who would tend to just curl up into the fetal position and stay that way in a state of paralysis, or worse, tend to want to do something like interrupt their process of being alive. So it is literally vitally necessary for us to be convinced that there is some meaning to the experiences of our lives, and that meaning is being communicated to us through the struggle of existing. In order to stay alive, which I think most people would agree is preferable, this need must be met. So what does it mean for our lives to have meaning? Well, I would want to answer that by way of an analogy. Imagine you're walking down a trail and you happen upon an arrangement of rocks just scattered about. There are a couple responses that you could offer to this geological discovery. You could look at it and say, what does this mean? What is the meaning conveyed by this arrangement of rocks? Or you could look at it and assume that it has no meaning. It's just the consequence of a long, random process of cause and effect. The former scenario where you ask yourself, what does this mean, is another way of asking, what does this communicate? That's what the question means. It's a way of asking what information, what knowledge, what wisdom that I don't currently possess is being communicated to me as long as I discern the facts that are available to me, which is this arrangement of rocks. And the only way that it can communicate something to you is if there is a will and an intellect communicating something to you by it, because it takes an intellect to arrange information and compose it in such a way that it can be received by another intellect, and it takes a will to actually perform the process of communicating it, whether it be through words, smoke signals, an arrangement of rocks, or through a written language. If you're on the other end of this kind of a communication protocol and you ask, what does this mean? You are assuming that there is an intellect and a will on the other end of that transaction trying to communicate the apparent meaning to you. And so it is with our lives. We cannot ask questions like, what does this mean? What is the meaning of my life? Or what do particular experiences mean, and what information is being conveyed to them, unless you assume that your life is derived from an intellect and a will who is communicating this information to you through those experiences. The alternative view is that you are a temporary expedient in a random, meaningless, chaotic sequence of cause and effect that doesn't convey any meaning or purpose, or really any information at all. And that might be a logical conclusion based on a particular interpretation of the evidence that is available to us. But if you do make that conclusion, then the least logical thing you can do after that is try to retain some belief that such an existence is still imbued with meaning. And we've already established that our lives have to have meaning in order for us to survive the paralysis that will descend upon us without such a belief. Now, some people would look at that and say, well, that's fine. You can derive your own meaning. You can invent your own meaning so as to be at peace with your own existence. You don't need a god or a higher intellect to derive that meaning from. Which, if we can revisit our analogy of the rocks on the trail, is like saying, well, these rocks don't actually mean anything, but I need them to mean something, so I'm just going to pretend like they actually do mean something and that they're communicating something which they are in fact not. Why would you need to do that? Most people would look at that and say, well, you don't need to do that. Not every arrangement of matter in the universe needs to be communicating some hidden message to us. Yet it is vital that our own lives do communicate some meaning to us, and it can't just be arbitrary or an invention of our own fancy, because that would undermine the very fact that we need true meaning that comes to us from something external. When we say, what is the meaning of a particular experience, we are saying, what information that I don't currently possess is being communicated to me through this experience? If the answer to that is, well, just invent your own meaning, well, then the question has remained unanswered, because the question is asking for information that I don't currently possess. But if the answer is, well, just invent something from the inventory of your own thought, then the answer is attempting to offer information that you do currently possess in response to a need for information that you don't currently possess. That merely ignores or avoids the question in the hopes of avoiding a more difficult conclusion, which is that our lives do have meaning, and that meaning is being communicated to us by an intellect and a will that is far higher than us, high enough to know the answer to the riddle, what is the meaning of our lives? And that is what we call God. Thanks for watching. The reason I can continue making content like this is because of the generous support of my viewers. If you feel called to support this work, then consider joining the Reinforcements, which is my online community. There are multiple tiers, including free access for those who can't help financially but still want to join. You can join up at www.brianholdsworth.ca. Certain levels will also get a free gift basket from Glory and Shine, who is a family-owned Catholic bath and body products company whose beard balm I'm wearing right now. It's like aromatherapy for your face. Even if you don't join, they make amazing products, so check them out at gloryandshine.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe. You don't have to agree with everything I said to get value out of these kinds of conversations, so be sure to subscribe to be edified or challenged. There's value in both.